WGSN-DB Going Solo Network welcomes you to award-nominated relationship internet radio talk show, Going Solo with Cece. Host Cece Shatz is a speaker, author, blogger, and the leading transitional divorce and dating coach with My Friends Connect and Going Solo Next Step. Now, together, let's join Cece.
Welcome. This is Cece with Going Solo, and it is so great to have you guys back. I missed you. So today we're going to move right forward with our guest today, and our guest is Shan White, and she is a certified divorce coach. And, we have a lot in common, and, I wanted to bring her on tonight because so many of us, as you all know, we have traveled through, and we're trying to travel through divorce recovery, into transition into dating, relationships, and really trying to live our best life. And I felt that she was really the go-to person to be able to help us with some of the difficulties that we are struggling with. And she is a certified life coach from the Tony Robbins School, highly professional, highly trained. And welcome to the show.
Well, it's my pleasure, Miss Cece. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And like I said, we have a parallel of what we do to helping others. And I was so touched by an article that you had written recently regarding fear with our transition of divorce recovery and into dating. And I wanted to reach out and really bring you on the show because I think that you can change lives, definitely change lives on the listeners here with this ongoing solo. So I'm so fortunate to have you on the show. So tell us now, how did you get into this arena, this type of work?
Well, I have to tell you, Cece, it was through going through a horrible divorce myself. And at the time, about 6 years ago, there really wasn't the help out there that there is today. And so I knew that I was going to be becoming a life coach. I was going to be certified. And you know what? It suddenly hit me. Of course, in our training, they talk about you're going to want to have a certain type of niche. And as I thought about it, I thought, oh, my gosh, who do I have the greatest heart for? And that is for women in particular. I specialize with women, working with women in either divorce recovery, they're in the midst of it, or a lot of times the divorce is over. I have been through it. I have been there. I was left for dead. And I don't think that, we all go through different circumstances. However, I don't think that there is an emotion that is felt out there through this process that I haven't experienced deeply. And so this is my heart. This is my passion.
Yeah, and that's why I felt so close to you. When I read your article, it just brought me in and made me realize that this is someone that has been touched and really healed from within and moving forward in a way that changes lives, helps individuals be able to move forward. And for this, I'm very thankful for. And there's so many things that we could talk about today. Is there any one thing that's hitting you and the people that you're helping that you wanted to maybe touch on today?
Sure. I think one, and you and I have discussed this before as well, Cece, and that is I think one of the areas that is so difficult to deal with, and that is the bugaboo issue of trust, meaning I am divorcing or have been divorced. I have been in some way betrayed, whether it's financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, through cheating. There's so many levels of betrayal. And then the question becomes, how can I ever trust again? I thought this was going to be forever. This person, which was hopefully the most important person in my life who has betrayed me, and how do I move forward? And you know what? With my clients, I have a little bit of a different take on it. And there's so many great, this isn't to dismiss any others that talk about trust and all the different ways in which you can deal with it, and they are so very helpful. But as far as my research has gone and my own personal experience is that, Cece, trust is really not about being able to trust others as much as it is about trusting yourself. So let me explain. To trust yourself, first of all, you've got to know yourself. And if you don't believe that you can trust yourself, then you don't really know yourself as deeply as you possibly can. For example, when my husband and I married, we married like most do, with 2 chicks and no dog model of marriage. And most people are like, what are you talking about, Stan? 2 chicks and no dog? I have to tell you, I give Larry Crabb, who is a counselor, for using this metaphor, and that is this. Chicks are, by virtue, intended to suck the lifeblood out of things in order for their own survival. And so I went into the marriage and found out later on that my husband did too, and a lot of marriages are this way, and that is they are looking to suck the life out of the other person, meaning they're approaching the marriage by saying, I have a hole in my heart, if you will, an emptiness that I want you, my partner, to fill me up. And I want you to make me feel important, beautiful, wonderful, loved, whatever the case may be. And so that there you have image. Now, that's a marriage with 2 ticks and no dog to, suck off of, because obviously in a relationship like that, you're looking for that other person to give you what only you yourself can give. And only after I divorced did I come to know myself better and understand that I could give myself those things I thought I needed someone else to make me feel, say, for example, good about myself. So after the marriage, once I became to know myself better, then I could trust myself to make better choices. So it no longer was a problem of trusting others. I could trust myself to pick up on the vibes of another tick, as it were, because I was one myself. And so I set an intention that I don't want someone like that with my new understanding that are 2 approaches to marriage, and that is you're either coming to the marriage with a viewpoint of scarcity, meaning I have a need, or you're coming with yourself filled up. And my personal belief is when 2 people come together that are full and they have the model of abundance, then it becomes a beautiful relationship where I'm full and I'm giving you out of my overflow, not out of my scarcity. So that's kind of a little bit of a long runabout way to say that trust really is more about you and trusting in yourself. And if you're not trusting yourself enough, then there's just a deeper level of knowing who you really are and, what you're capable of. What are your thoughts on that, Cece?
That is so true, and I've often said that a lot of times when we start focusing on the other party, we're going through divorce, on all the different situations that have happened, whether it's infidelity or all of the other things, what we're doing is we're actually taking ownership of that because we're bringing that forward to ourselves. And so if they decided to step outside of the marriage, or they didn't focus on us because of their job, or whatever the reason might be, it's not ours to take on. It's only of the depth of ourselves that we should look at. And, what part did we play in it? And if we acknowledge that, oh, yeah, okay, maybe we did do something, we did play a part in it, then we acknowledge that, we recognize that, and those are the things that we work on. Is if we work too hard, or if we did something, then we can take ownership of our own behavior and our own thoughts, because we can't control somebody else. We can't control what they did, or if they're ever going to do it again. We can only control what we did and our thoughts to it. So it is a better knowing of ourselves and acceptance of ourselves for who we are, what we want, what we desire, where we want to go in life. So it's really understanding that.
Oh, I just love what you said about taking responsibility, personal responsibility for what we brought to the marriage, grow out of that, decide who it is that what we are and what we want to become. And then, you know what, don't you don't you find that whether you're looking to date or marry again or not, matters not, but don't you find that when there's a healing in yourself that you are then attracting a different type of person as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've had to, from my own experience, and maybe you feel the same way, we'll share it with the audience, is that I had to actually look really deep at my own life and my own situation. And I thought more about, as I was growing up as a child, what I experienced, how I was feeling. And I could see a lot of my insecurities that I brought forward into my adult life was really based on my insecurity as of being, raised, being young, and my expectation of what a relationship was supposed to be like. And now today that I'm in, my latter years of life, I'm changing that expectation of what I want my life to be. And I think we do evolve as we grow as individuals. Wouldn't you say?
I would, and it's so, what, I bet a lot of those that are listening in right now they're going to probably find the same thing because, Cece, I am just like you, and there's got to be so many people out there, at least those that I work with, and that is exactly right. I, too, had a huge amount of insecurities, was brought up in an environment of a performance environment, meaning if you don't perform perfectly and be the good girl, then love is withdrawn from you. And so I went into the relationship with those same expectations that I'm really, if I were to be honest with myself, Cece, I was going into it from that scarcity standpoint that there's a need, there's a lack in me. I don't feel good about myself. I've got huge amounts of insecurities, and so I want someone else to heal me, to love me, to make me feel all the things that I never felt as a child, never realizing that the healing actually starts within and that I could actually become the woman I've always dreamed of being and really, honestly, never thought was possible. And then I could bring that to the table as opposed to, again, the tick model. And you're so right. And then let me say this. A lot of us maybe even have, it depends on our path of life, but a lot of us have those insecurities and maybe aren't quite vividly aware of them as perhaps maybe they are now going through, and you start to question and evaluate. But I tell you what, isn't the growth worth it, hon?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've even just written a chapter in a book from, it's called Dare to be Authentic, Volume 3, with Mari Mitchell, and with a lot of ladies as a collaborative author. And my chapter is titled Going Solo, Learning to Be Me, learning trust from going through my divorce. And so I won't give all of it away because I do want you guys to buy the book. But I realized that my life was shaped at an early path, and my expectation of a relationship was based on that. And so in every relationship I had thereafter, I kept wanting more, but I didn't know why I wanted more and why I wasn't getting more, and understanding what I was getting was where I was at. So taking me through my divorce now and moving me forward, realizing that I had to work on myself, made me only to understand that it was really my past and not understanding myself and moving through that. So to make a long story short, I do feel that we do attract what we do believe and what we think we're worthy of. Maybe that word, use that word, worthy, because I think that was one of my problems, that I didn't think I was worthy of a good man that wouldn't necessarily abuse me in some sort, because that's what I was used to. So now, looking at my life and understanding who I am now, it's like, forget this, man. I am worthy of a whole lot more, and I'm going to shape my life and open my heart out to someone that is worthy of me. And so I've just changed my whole mindset of it, and I think it's opened just the parameters for me to really move forward and enjoy my life. And so I see that within the people that my life has touched, those that have come into my divorce support group and those that have experienced listening to the radio broadcast. It's just definitely come full circle for me, in a good way, not in a bad way, but in a very good way, realizing who I am and where I've come from and knowing where I want to go. So how about you?
Same. I didn't even understand it at the time. And I have to tell you, for those of you that are listening, these are some of the benefits that come out of it. You think, this is such an awful thing, and it is a horrible thing that I'm going through, and how is life ever going to get better, and how am I going to get through this? But the way that I look at it after the fact, looking backwards, is just what you were talking about. I get the opportunity to reinvent my life and who I am and what I'm truly about, gaining authenticity, because I went into the marriage really in pretty much a fake way, just putting on a facade of who I thought he wanted me to be. And why? Just like you said, I felt a lack of worth. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin and who I was, and that was the root of the problem. And so therefore, I developed a facade of what I believed would make someone love me and be attracted to me, which is so hysterical now, isn't it? As if you could make somebody love you ever, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember thinking, well, if I could just do this better, if I could just do that better, if I could just be who he wanted me to be, he would love me. He would think that I'm okay. But every time I try to do more and more, he just kept finding fault in me. Well, why couldn't you be faster on this? Why couldn't you do this more? Why couldn't you do that? How come you can't look like this person or be like this person? And it just like, it was like a no-win situation, which just made me I was just getting sick over it, absolutely getting physically ill over it, because I knew I couldn't be who he wanted me to be. And then I realized, you know what? I have to be me. I have to be okay with me. And that kind of took a turn for my life to make my life change. The other turning point for me was my daughter said to me, after I had going through the divorce, she said to me, I was going to be going over and seeing her and everything. And every weekend I would say, okay, what are we going to do this weekend? Well, what are we going to do? Finally, she turned to me and she said, Mom, you got to get a life. And I realized again, I was coming from divorce, being, married a long time. I didn't have a life. I didn't have one. My life was to him. Everything, my whole existence was all about him, just like you had mentioned before. And then I realized, my gosh, I don't have a life. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? I was just like, I was so overwhelmed with that. What am I going to do? And who am I? And I don't even know what I like anymore because I was so busy. I started doing everything she liked to do. I was just transforming myself into my children. And so I thought, whoa, wait a minute. I'm going to be one old lonely broad if I don't do something different. So that was a reality for me. How about for you?
I just loved what you said, because I think that's something that we probably all, or at least most of us, have in common, and that is we, in the beginning, middle, or end of divorce, we think, what is my life going to be? And thus, that's where the curse becomes a blessing. You get to reinvent your entire world from the foundation up, and that can be very exciting, just to decide who you are and what you really are about, and what really are your core values, what's important to you and what's not. And looking back, we don't even necessarily have to look back. Sure, there's going to be regret, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing in terms of, sure, we all kind of created something that we really weren't. But now the blessing is we get to refigure it out and become more real and more authentic and more genuine and more ourselves than we ever were. And we've learned some valuable lessons of what not to repeat in the future. Those things that we did, like you and I, creating a false version of ourselves. And really, if you think about it, we sold ourselves out. And now we get to reclaim our authenticness and our own souls and say, just like you did, you know what? Wait a minute. I am okay the way that I am. Is that to say I'm perfect? Oh, hell to the no. But I want to be genuinely me. And I want to attract someone that loves, respects, and honors me for me. And I now know that putting on all of these facades, and oftentimes it's subconsciously, is not the way to go. And it's, first of all, just because it's disingenuous. That's always going to come back to bite us in the butt, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, now looking, fast forwarding, and I know those out there, you want to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. For me, I had to step back and I really started thinking, okay, well, what makes me happy? That was probably my very first step, thinking about my joy, bringing my joy back, what really made me happy. And I started, at an early age, I started dance. I loved to dance. I danced all through high school. I was a dancer in the high school, and then I continued on. And then when I met my husband, he didn't like to dance. None of them liked to dance, which is one of my big passions. And it was like, well, wait a minute. So I started going back into dance, doing some small things, small steps of what I really liked doing. And I found that I just started blossoming. Just the real me started coming out, the joy. My father even said I was laughing like a teenager. I was having a lot more fun. And eventually I got to the point where my daughter said, gosh, Mom, you got so much of a life. I need to make an appointment. And it was true. I was having fun. I was really, really enjoying myself. I don't want listeners out there to think that being single is okay. You don't necessarily have to have someone right with you. I mean, it's great if you can eventually move forward, date, and have a partner in life. I mean, I would love to see all of us have that. But if we choose not to do that, and that's the big thing, is choose not to do that, that's okay too. Because we can connect with friends and do a lot of different things, of course, be with our family. We can really be okay as long as we're okay within ourselves. And
you're so right. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, do you find that too? Do you find that as you are moving forward throughout your divorce?
Oh, it's such in a big way, Cece. I really, just like I coach my clients, I had the privilege of literally reinventing my whole life and then building a career that I have extreme passion at, none like I had in the past, working for anybody else, doing anything else. And that curse became my blessing, because I sat there just like some of you folks out there right now. What the hell am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? What am I going to do about the kids? There's all these questions. And if you can allow yourself settled into the reality that, you know what, I'm going to reframe this. I'm going to look at this as an opportunity to find my joy, as you mentioned. And as a matter of fact, I wrote an article on divorcemagazine.com. I think it's divorcemag.com for those of you that may be interested in reviving your joy. And that is so huge. And one of the things that I mentioned is really similar to your experience, Cece, and that is that finding things that bring you joy don't have to be the big, magnanimous, I want a mansion and a Maserati and a six-figure income and things like that. I found, just as you did, that really it's the smaller things in life that brought me joy that I never even realized, and I discounted. And, oh, boy, what a mistake was that for me. And to revive that which made me joyful. And I went through the same thing that you did. Forget this. For example, my husband never liked holidays. Well, in my family, when I was a kid, that one of the good things is that we made a big deal about all of the holidays, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas especially. And I found, like you, that I started giving up those things because he didn't care for them. For example, as soon as I got divorced, I thought about what you did. What are the simple pleasures in life that really bring me joy? And one of the things is, you know what, and this is bad on me, I sacrificed and started doing less and less and less for the holidays. And one commitment I made to myself that just tickled me pink is that next Christmas, I tell you what, girl, I brought out every Christmas decoration. My house looked like a cheap version, of course, of Nordstrom's department store, because I brought out everything. And I tell you what, that may not be for everybody. This is just an example. But I tell you what, I just giggled looking at the Christmas tree at night, all lit up, and the beauty of it, and even the silly Santa Clauses that is on a bed, and you push the button, and he snores, and his stomach goes up and everything. And I loved it. My joy returned. And more I took back that which empowered me and brought me joy. And here's the thing, folks. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters that it matters to you. It could be the silliest thing in the whole wide world. If it's important to you, then you revive that habit, that whatever it is, just like it could be dancing, it could be anything. Don't you think, Cece?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. It's the can-do moment. I think that for me, I stepped out and did so many different things. A lot of my girlfriends, they would always say to me, well, shake it up. You know, I have a good girlfriend, Janet Tatum, and she used to always tell me to, step out of the box and shake it up. If something's not working for you, do something different. And just step out and do something out of the norm. And which brings me here to the radio show. I started in my own show, and totally something I would never imagine in a million years thought I could possibly do, let alone now we have our own station, Going Solo Network. I just sit back and I'm awed at what I have achieved and really my vision of where I want to go. So it shocks me now to think that there's no lid, there's no ceiling to what I can achieve, when before, in my marriage for so many years, there was just constantly, basically a lid on my pot, So, yeah, it is amazing. Once you can catch your breath, and I think really connect with someone that's positive in your life, like, connect with a coach or someone such as yourself. I think it really does help people to be able to move forward, connect with like-minded, understanding. See, for you, been there, done that approach. You know what people are going through. You can relate to them. That's what makes you such an excellent coach. I get all the training you've done, and I admire you for that, but it's who you are, the depth of you, that makes you the one that's the seeker that they need to seek out and find. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. And you know what? That is why we are here. And I agree with you that for those folks that are listening in that are going through this, seek out whatever nourishes your soul. A trusted friend, a coach, a pastor. Listen to this radio program, a book. There are just, the internet is full of information and helpful articles and how-tos and folks like us today sharing our experiences. And are we the be-all, know-all? Probably not. We probably don't have 100% of all knowledge, all places. Only God has that. But you know what? We're here to help. There's other sources out there. Whatever resonates with the gal or the guy that's really struggling, I completely agree with you. And by the way, a recent study came out that those that did seek out either an individual or a group or organization that had similar challenges with what they were going through were able to progress and grow and get over it sometimes 50% faster. What are your thoughts on that, Cece?
Oh, absolutely. I think our world is about connection. That's why the internet is so strong. That's why we have, social media is so strong. Because I think as individuals, our heart, our soul, we need to connect. And so when we're in pain, it's so vital, I think, to connect with other like-minded people that understand what we're going through. They don't think badly or poorly of us for breaking down and crying or feeling that pain or whatever we're experiencing, the difficulties going through. It's that connection that is so very important. When we stay at home and we become very lonely and very sad, we're basically destructing ourselves. We're destroying our inner selves, our inner core. So I think by reaching out and connecting with someone, and it can just be one person, it can just be, like you said, it can be your pastor, it can be anyone, just one person that understands truly what you're experiencing can make the world of difference for you. It's taking those baby steps. We have a lady in our divorce support group who said it's all about the baby steps, Andrea says, and it's so true. It's like you just keep taking one little baby step after another. It's like learning to walk all over again.
It's true. And the one thing that you talked about I really resonated with, and that is, please, you guys, don't allow yourself to isolate. And that's, Cece, I'm going to just tell you, admit to you the mistakes that I made, and I was one of those, so I get it. I didn't want to, I was in such a freaked out mode in terms of I was horrified, I was scared, I was petrified as to how to move on. I mean, I was just shaking like a leaf, and I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be with anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And I have to just share with you and our precious folks that are listening in that I do chalk that up to one of the biggest mistakes that I made. I get the feeling. I totally understand it. But I have to say that it would have been, my healing progress would have gone much better and much faster had I gone ahead. And sometimes it is those baby steps of just making yourself go out or go to that group or visit with a girlfriend or a guy friend and have a cup of coffee and with someone that you really trust and that knows you and that loves you and cares about you, that you can just vent. But sometimes it is just forcing yourself that you know that this is better for you even though you don't feel like it. It's kind of putting fact over feeling, if you will. Yeah. I understand the fact that this is good for me even though I don't feel like it. And we've all done, you know what? We all do those things all through life, especially with work. There's tons of stuff in our job we don't feel like, but we want the paycheck. In other words, we want the pay off, and so we make ourselves do it. Well, if we're going to do that for our employers, why wouldn't we do it for ourselves?
Absolutely. So right on with that. But I do think probably, and more I talk to people, they do get to that, I kind of call it the quiet zone, where you do have to sometimes just lay still, or you have to kind of absorb where you're at, and that is very isolating. And so I've seen individuals experience that. I mean, I did it myself, almost to the point of destruction, which is really bad. So this is why we're here today. You know, those out there listening don't get to that point. But I do think it's okay to be still and start understanding yourself a little bit more. And sometimes it's within the quiet that we talk to our inner self. We talk to we allow our inner self to come forward and, share with us and tell us things that we need to do to move forward. Because we so often really know, don't you think? We really know that, okay, here's what the problem is, and here's how we can solve it, but we don't want to listen to that little voice that's inside.
Yes, and you know what? You said it just right, and that is, you didn't use these words, but everything has a spectrum on it. And on one end of the spectrum is isolating yourself altogether for a long period of time where you don't ever reach out, do anything, go anywhere, talk to anybody. And then the other end of the spectrum you alluded to, and that is I am in so much pain that I must fill my life up where I am active 24/7 just so that I don't have to think about it. And you're right. That's a danger zone too. There is a balance between taking that time out for yourself and being alone. And how are you going to get to know the real you and discover your joys and your values unless you have that alone time? But by the same token, to do that all the time is also unhealthy and unbalanced. So there's a balance there in that middle part of the spectrum where you've got the time to be with yourself and just mourn and grieve and even just begin to be thinking about the future and your life and what you want to build, and then also reaching out for that help. So I think that you summed it up beautifully, because I think the one word that comes out of that whole portion of our conversation is balance. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Another turning point for me was acceptance, because when my daughter told me that I needed to get a life, that's when I started understanding that I totally did not accept where I was. I was just moving, my activities, whether they were happy or whatever, I was just moving them on to her, just like you said, to fill my life. But I really didn't accept where I was, and I don't think we can move forward unless we say, hey, okay, here we are. We're getting a divorce whether we like it or not, and so now I've got to learn to live with this, and I need to figure out how I can live with my own self and move forward. And I think when we make that choice of accepting where we're at, not putting blame on either party, whether it be ourselves or the other party, just saying, this is where I am, and now it's time for me to dust off, move forward. How do I do that? And I think that's always a changing point, don't you think?
Absolutely, I do. And you know what? Acceptance is the tipping point from going from, well, it's actually one of the steps of the grieving process. And we can all agree that going through a divorce, even if it's amenable, is a grieving process, because you are mourning the death, not of a physical life, but the death of the life that you once had. The death of a marriage is a grieving process. And of course, you start out with denial, which I certainly went through, and then anger. Oh my gosh, I was an angry little bird. You could not even imagine. I was more pissed off than anybody I think I ever knew. And then and then there is the acceptance part. You finally come to that stage, and I pray that all of our listeners, if they haven't come to it yet, that they will console themselves to know that they will get there in their own time. And the acceptance is the tipping point. Once you finally accept, okay, I hate it, I'm mad, I wanted to deny it away, but here's where I am. This is what I have to deal with. And once real acceptance starts to settle into your soul, the tip-off for those that are listening is going to be when acceptance first starts to rise in your soul. The tip is going to be that you will start thinking about the future. And it may not even look pretty or bright, trust me, but you're just starting to think about, like Cece said, okay, this is what I've got to deal with. So how do I handle this? Where do I go? Where do I get the help? What about housing? What about finances? What about the future? What about careers? What about kids? There's so many things, but when you start to think in those terms, acceptance is starting to deep in. And, oh, Cece, isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's not something you can really describe, because a lot of individuals that I've coached, they're just start out the process and they hardly even want to talk to you, and then they say they're never going to get married again, they're never going to have a relationship again, they're never going to even talk to a man or a woman again. And then at the end of it, when you start to see them turn, they really start opening and seeing their future and possibilities of maybe another partner in their lives, or moving through to what it is that they really love doing, focusing on maybe a career that they had lost a long time ago, writing or something like this. I have a lot of people tend to move forward into the arts because it's something that they've always had a passion for. They kind of shelved it because of life, and life got in the way a little bit, and so they've brought that forward a little bit more. I mean, I've had one lady became an actress. I've had several artists within the group. So it's amazing how, again, it's just almost like a flower, how you blossom. It's really quite a unique experience to see someone move through and actually begin to look forward to their life versus wanting to shut the door on their life.
You know, you're right. And I love the fact that you're seeing folks getting into the arts, because any form of art, whether it's singing or writing or dancing or painting or sculpting, it starts to loosen the creative juices in you, and it opens you up in ways and in different dimensions sometimes that perhaps you didn't even know was there. And I love your metaphor about the fact that it's like we're this closed up, tightened flower, and you just start to open up and blossom again, and you feel that life is starting to open up again for you. And I just love that.
It's a great feeling. And when you look back, and I know you've probably done it yourself because, we're a little bit further ahead than maybe some of the listeners out there, but when you look back on some of it, I look at it now as a blessing. I can't tell you what a favor he did to me. I would have still stayed in that marriage. But because of those things that he did, made me say, no more. I can't take any of this stuff anymore. I'm just at such a great place right now, which I would have never been at. So to me, it's a blessing, an absolute blessing of all the ill will and all of the, things that I might have had to endure at that time. I would not be here today if it wasn't for that. So I'm very pleased and happy with my life. I know that others are going to be feeling the same way when they move through and get to that point. And I know you probably feel the same way, that you look back on your life, and even though you might have liked to have changed some of the things you've experienced, but those experiences have shaped you for who you are.
They have, and I feel the same way, and I think that I'm so glad we're talking about it. For those that are out there right now that are like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel any hope. I don't see any way out of this. This is always going to be terrible and awful, and we all have those feelings, and that's a valid feeling. And so I love the fact that you and I that have been there, done that, and gone through it and come out of the other side are sharing things like this, because I would have never told you during and probably for a year or two or more after the divorce that this was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was. It changed my whole world. I am a happier, healthier, more balanced person that has a sense of meaning and purpose that honestly, Cece, I would have never had he not what felt like left me for dead, with all of the bills and the responsibilities and the houses and the cars and the furry kids, because we didn't have, human children. And I felt like it was all just black and terrible. And now I can join you in saying, again, my curse became my blessing. Best thing that ever happened to me, and I would not be where I am today if it wasn't through going through all of the hell and the muck and the mire, and, none of us are minimizing our experience. It was hard. It was tough. And there's good days and bad days, aren't there, Cece?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And things would trigger me, and I would be thinking, oh, I'm great, I'm doing really wonderful, and then all of a sudden something would trigger me again. And, and even to this day, I do have some sad moments because I have a child, I have a son with my ex, and sometimes when we do some family things, I think, oh, gosh, it would have been nice to be able to have that family feeling, that family environment, but it just wasn't meant to be, and my life is the way it is now, and so I have to accept for the way it is, because I look back now and I think about it and I think, oh, I wish, I wonder if it would, but here it is. It's not like that. And there again, it's my thinking that, oh, it could have been like that, but it wasn't like that. My marriage was not like that. It wasn't what I envisioned it to be. I kept thinking if I thought hard enough, I could change it and make it the way it was, but it wasn't. And so I realize now, looking back on it, that my marriage is the way it was, and I can't change that. And so I'm happy with the way I am today and how I'm moving forward in my life. So it's a cool experience to finally get to the other side, and I'm still climbing that hill. And how about you? You still doing it too?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And one of the things that you spoke about reminded me of something that I want to caution our listeners to, and if this is for you, if it resonates with you, great, consider it, and if it's not, that's great too. But one of the things that I have found is, like you, Cece, I miss the good times, and there's no relationship on the face of this earth that's 100%. It may even be 99, but it's not 100% all bad, all negative, all the time. And so we have this tendency to remember the good times, and the thing that I did was I am very certainty-based, meaning I want my life that I can feel certain about things, and that's sometimes a facade for us. So what I did is I found myself wanting to go back, and if I can't have my dream life, I was at least certain that, there were some good things, and so I'm just going to accept that. And so I'm too scared to move forward and create my own life, so I think I'm going to just try to make this relationship work. And that's why I say for some folks that may be the right thing to do. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just simply giving a shout out to those that may want to go backwards, and perhaps it's not the healthiest thing for them, and they may even know it on the inside, but because of fear, it's the only thing we knew, and so we would rather accept less for us. I did it. I know the feeling, and so please, 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 for those of you that this is resonating with, please consider it seriously before you try to go backwards, if you will. What do you think of? What are your thoughts on that, Cece?
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Because the thing is we do have to understand where we're at, and so if you're going to stay within the relationship, you have to be real about the way the relationship is. And so if you're going to accept it, that's okay. If that's what you choose to do, but not if that's what you feel you have to do. And so I think that's the big difference. I mean, I know that, marriages long time ago, they stayed within it, they endured, but we don't have to endure. We as women, men, if you're in a bad relationship, you don't have to deal with sadness and be unhappy. You are entitled to be happy and to live a good, full life. And so I often say, when I talk about being single, that we're trying to live our best life, because that's what I want everyone to do. And what your best life is may not be what my best life is. But if that's what you've chosen to do, if you've chosen to stay within the marriage for whatever reason there is, but it cannot be for fear or anything like that, because it won't work. You're just going to revisit all of those feelings once again. All of where you're at now and you're feeling bad and you're feeling the fear of moving forward and all of this, if you stay within the relationship because of fear of moving forward, you're still going to revisit that same thing because you're not happy. So your elements are going to stay the same. Nothing's going to change the same for you unless you make a change or you decide this is what I want. Don't you agree?
You know, I do. And we usually make decisions from one or two spectrums, and that is out of love or out of fear. And I was in a huge fear, and I wish I had someone like you or me ask myself that question, which is a great question if we're kind of in the midst of this right now. Am I doing this because I'm afraid, or am I doing this because I truly, genuinely love this person and want to make it work? And I'm seeing signs from my partner, at least some type of, I'll never forget Tony Robbins once said, if you're making a decision based on fear, it's the wrong decision. Agree with that. If it's based out of fear, somehow, even if it's a small portion, it'll come back and bite you in the butt. And you know what? All of us remember, I'm sure. Have you ever been in a relationship where, and you may have been married or maybe just dating, but it broke off, and then you went back to that after a certain time? And, you know, we all romanticize the good times. We tend to remember the good and forget all the bad, and then we go back into it, and all of a sudden, haven't you had that light bulb over the head moment where it's like, oh, my gosh, I remember why I'm not with this person again, right?
Right, absolutely, absolutely. You know, one thing I was going to mention, too, is that change is like, we can't, if you stay into a relationship you're unhappy with, and if you're going to go back into it, people have said, well, they'll change, or they're changing. But the reality is they don't change, you change. So if you're willing to change, then maybe you possibly can make it work. But if you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to do adapt to it, it's not going to work. You're going to be at the same place again, and it's going to be even more painful. But sometimes people have to be shown. They have to see it for themselves, and so they have to experience it a couple times to be able to say, you know what, this, I gave it a shot, and this isn't working. And there it is, right?
You're right. And you know what? So right. And for those of you that have done that before, don't judge yourself, because that will put you in that same downward spiral. Sometimes it takes us 1 or 2 times to go back. Sometimes it takes us 7 or 10 times to figure out, this is really, it feels like I'm trying to push a square peg in a round hole. No matter what I do, it is just not working. And so we all have a different path to go on, and it all takes us different amounts of times and experiences and awarenesses to find out what is really good for us. And nobody can make that decision. We cannot delegate that type of decision to somebody or something else. We have to decide what is balanced, good, and healthy for us. What do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. My mother used to have a great saying, it is what it is. So whenever I would look at things, something was really bothering me, I would just repeat that in my head, it is what it is, and then I would look at what is it, and then I would be able to really understand where I was at. So I can't always change. You can't change somebody else. I can't always change things, but I can change my outlook. I can change the way I want to do things. I can change where I am. I can easily leave or whatever. So sometimes it takes us changing ourselves and changing our environments and changing our perspective that makes a difference, because we can't always change the other person. We don't necessarily want to take their ownership of their behavior. We want to take ownership of our own behavior. And I think that's really important. Well, you know what? It's really super to have you on the show. We talked about a lot of things, and let's just kind of recap real quick. We were talking about trust at the very beginning, about taking ownership of your own. And so this way it empowers you to really be who you are, and so that you can trust yourself. Really steps beginning with joy, understanding yourself and what makes you happy, understanding those quiet times. The steps that we go through, grief and loss, anger and acceptance, of course, is a turning point for us. And really take those baby steps to move forward. And above all, to link yourself with other like-minded, positive, energetic individuals that are going to change your life. Because where you're at is where you're going to stay if you continue to want to stay there. So if you want to move out, move into other horizons, you need to fill your heart, soul, and mind and link with someone that can possibly grasp a hand and say, hey, take mine, we'll move forward. And then the very, very last thing is the future. It can be bright if we so want it to be, right? And that's where we're at. So tell us how we can get a hold of you if anyone wants to you do one-on-ones for coaching, and maybe someone might like to give you a call. So let's share all your contact information.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Cece, so much. It's been such an honor and a pleasure. I've just enjoyed speaking with you so much. And yes, my passion is to be able to help people, women, walk through this. And so I am always happy to offer a complimentary consultation. They can do so in 3 different manners. They can reach out to me directly at my office, which is 719-388-8758. Or if they prefer online to sign up for a complimentary consultation on my website, it is www.women's, and that's plural, womenspeakperformancecoaching.com. Or if they're the type that just like to shoot out an email, my email address is Shan, my first name, SHAN, coaches, plural, Shan coaches, at Comcast.net, and I would be happy to be of assistance. I have to tell you, Cece, my greatest.
Well, Shan White, you are an amazing lady, and I thank you so much for being on the show. Man, we have covered, in a very short period, so much impactful, inspiring information. It's absolutely wonderful. And I know that the listeners will take away a lot of great information here.